Hi guys, we'll give it just a couple of minutes to let everybody, because it is 1 o'clock, so we'll let everybody get back from lunch and then we'll get started here in just a few minutes.
Okay, so to learn more about this just tells me what it's looking for, but it doesn't tell me if this is good or bad.
I'm sorry, did I miss something?
Sounds like she might have been chatting with someone else in the office.
Okay, okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Just a few reminders as this webinar is recorded and will be placed on the YouTube channel of Indiana Main Street as soon as we get off here and can get everything transferred over. I am Teresa Kamen. I am the Indiana Main Street Senior Program Manager here for Indiana. Also, we have Glenn Ferris on the call, who is Indiana Main Street Program Manager, our ODAN specialist. And then also who will be hosting our webinar today, we have Amy Miller from Main Street America. Amy serves as the program officer. She is responsible for delivering and expanding the reach of our technical assistance and consulting services within the network for coordinating programs. So we are happy to have her today. She is experienced in building community, developing and implementing strategic plans, volunteer management, and creating award-winning community engagement strategies. So this is right up her league with the Economic Vitality webinar. So this is great having her here. She values community participation. She is skilled at developing public-private partnerships and building a toolbox that helps the private sector be successful. She understands the creativity, which sometimes when you're dealing with economic vitality, sometimes you do have to be creative. So I love that. She's very patient and persistent with that economic development and context of historic preservation requires. She is very collaborative work, including planning and implementing a $4 million park expansion in the heart of downtown with public art and diverse accessible playground, which I'm sure took a lot of that data, that ROI is expected and needed to do. So this is fantastic. She holds a master's in public administration. Amy has successfully led capital campaigns, managed multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects, led downtown revitalization programs, and implemented community priorities in economic development and historic preservation. She has a track record of turning community ideas into tangible results and is a recognized leader in her field, having received multiple awards for her contributions to downtown development, communications, and historic preservation. So, Amy, I am so thrilled to have you today. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody here cannot wait to hear what you have to say. So, Amy, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, but Main Streeters, as you guys have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat, and Glenn and I will try to help facilitate those questions for you.
Absolutely. Well, hello, everybody. And thank you for that great introduction. I love the work of Main Street. And while I have been in Texas most of my life, I'm based in Central Texas near Austin. I grew up in Wisconsin and Ohio. And on my part, I love seeing what people working together at the local level can do and getting to be a part of that. And so Main Street is definitely like my favorite personal passion. So really glad to be with you guys today. It would be awesome if you'd share your name, town, organization in the chat. And then as you have questions throughout the presentation, just pop those into the Q&A tool and we will we'll take questions probably at the end just to be a little more sorted about it. And so let's hop in. As you guys know, you are part of a national network. So you've got your local program that is supported by the coordinating program in Indiana, which is our partner at the national level, to be able to work with you and bring you things like this virtual webinar that we're doing today. On our part, we work with about 1,600 communities throughout the United States, implementing the 4-point approach, which is coming up on a 50-year anniversary, but that is design, organization, economic vitality, and promotion as a unified, balanced effort to support economic development in the context of historic preservation in communities across the United States. And so when today we're going to specifically focus on economic vitality and kind of that data and reporting and the strategic assets that we use in our work and how that makes our work stronger. The EV part of the 4-point approach is intended to support that existing economic base as well as help it grow. And it's about kind of rethinking how we use space downtown, how we could use space, and the partners that we bring together to help us grow and evolve. We are trying to catalyze new investment. We're trying to create an ecosystem that supports small business development. Communities have unique assets, and this is the area where we can really focus on those and take advantage of what that brings to the community. We are trying to be, equitable and inclusive in the work that we're doing and thinking about how more people can be able to open businesses downtown or grow the businesses that they have downtown. And we do all of this work throughout the 4-point approach with partners and creating partnerships that support that development overall. Now, economic vitality piece has lots of impacts, and you guys are going to receive these slides after the presentation as well. But part of what we're trying to do is listen to the local community. What are they interested in? What are they looking for? What resonates for them in terms of what they need downtown, what they hope to have downtown. We're trying to support local business development, thinking about what kind of grants or incentives can support investment downtown. How can we creatively and adaptively reuse the assets that we have? And where are the gaps that we might be able to help fill? Now, hopefully everybody has an economic vitality committee, or maybe you call it business retention and recruitment, by whatever name it refers to itself as, if it's a task force, et cetera. Hopefully you have a small group of people who are helping you with this part of the work in the 4-point approach. And when we think about what they can be doing, so they can be helping with everything from building inventories, your business inventories, connections with realtors, making better connections with property owners in terms of what they are concerned about, what is standing in their way of making investments, or what they would be considering for the future of their properties. It's a team that really helps with policy advocacy when we need to consider regulatory changes, perhaps at the city level. Um, these are the people who can be the face at those public meetings, helping push that along and advocate for those changes. And then, of course, just resources and making the connections for having more involvement from our partners and more technical training. We're ultimately trying to build an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And this is a framework that you can learn more about on the Main Street America website. But essentially, there are 7 factors to support a strong ecosystem for economic development in a downtown. Obviously, financing and funding options, looking at creating that positive entrepreneurial culture where we want to see this kind of investment. Looking at the regulations and trying to see how we can be more friendly from a regulatory perspective, even if that's just from a communications perspective and helping folks understand what the regulations are. The entrepreneurial talent pool, the education and training options, the networking things that we facilitate so that entrepreneurs have more opportunity to build relationships with each other, and ultimately those technical training things. But all of it's based on place, and all of it is looking at this unique location that we have downtown that has unique assets, thinking about whether or not how the digital infrastructure is working in the downtown, what kind of design services might help property owners see the improvements that they could make, or helping a business owners see how different types of signage could be more effective. Looking at those third spaces and whether it's for our local community or for our entrepreneurs and creative makers, how are they finding a place to be and to gather? When we look at our spaces downtown, they, generally speaking, don't function today the way that they did 50 or 100 years ago. In many ways, we have even more opportunities today for what could be happening with the spaces downtown. And so here, encourage you to be in working with your volunteers and your partners to be thinking about what are these different ways that we could be utilizing space, and how could we support that? Do we need changes from a regulatory perspective to allow things like light industry to be happening downtown, for there to be perhaps a furniture maker or cabinetry or blacksmithing? Are some of these more artisanal endeavors, food production, are these things allowed in our downtown? How could we support having more residential and allowing more people to live in the downtown district? So these are all things that fit in that in this economic vitality piece of our 4 points. And so inventorying things is really important as the first place to start. So we have to know what we have to work with. We need to understand the buildings that we have in the district. What condition are they in? Whether or not they're occupied, why are they fully occupied? What kind of ownership system is in place? Is it perhaps it's an heirship situation where several family members are responsible for the building? Maybe it's out of town landlord, but being able to connect with and reach out to those property owners is really important. We look at the business mix, and again, in working with our local community, what do we hope for in terms of that business mix for downtown? And then we are definitely looking at what are the challenges for each one of these properties, whether that is maintenance that needs to be done, like brick tuck pointing, or perhaps it's interior work that needs to be done so that it could support having a certificate of occupancy or having maybe more than one tenant in the building. And ultimately, when we're thinking about that business mix for downtown, we do rely on our market demographics and that community vision of what do we hope for? You know, what would we like to see in the future in downtown? Now, one of the tools for an inventory, and I understand, I think Maestro is in use from what Teresa was telling me, but I'm going to share here that Booms Tracker is one of the resources available through Main Street America, and while there is definitely an investment of time and energy to shift to a new system, this is a really robust system, and it does offer a lot of benefits. And we do free classes on how to use Booms Tracker. And have like little office hours that you can sign up for and so on if you are, you know, feeling stuck, and we've got a little Q&A, you can reach out, etc. But however you track it, the most important thing is that you are keeping a current and active building inventory and business inventory to support your economic vitality work. And this is one of the tools that you can be using. The next most important thing is how often are you working with this? So however you're tracking it, and hopefully starting to use the Booms Tracker, that you're doing that regularly. And this is a good example of a place where volunteers can be a huge asset. Booms Tracker is intended to be, you can do it from a cell phone or from an iPad in terms of entering information and updating information. And you could also use a survey with your volunteers, where they could have like a Google fillable form survey on their device. And as they go meet with business owners and property owners, they could be filling that in so that they're collecting consistent information, but also acknowledging that folks don't typically want to fill out a survey, but if you're there chatting with them, you can be collecting that information. So, so yeah, there's some benefits there. The most important thing being that you're keeping it and that you are regularly updating it. And another reason that place matters is that 80% of our small business owners, according to the Main Street America Small Business Survey from 2023, are local people. They live in the community. They're already here. And so when it comes to business recruitment, it's not necessarily that we need to be leaving our community to be finding folks who want to make that investment and who have a dream of what they would like to be doing downtown. So from a regulatory perspective, zoning, code enforcement, and ordinances to support things like use of public space for private purposes downtown are all things that the EV committee can be looking at and can be working on and advocating for. So when it comes to zoning, sometimes that requires a mixed use overlay. Sometimes it's an opportunity to look at your parking requirements and work with the city as to how could those be modified or potentially reduced. When we look at code enforcement, part of what is challenging for property owners is the feeling that you came in and inspected this building, and now I have this really long list of things that need to be corrected, some of which could be very expensive, and I have to do this all at once. And so now I feel like a big wall is in front of me, and you don't want me to be investing. You don't want me to make improvements here. There's an opportunity in working with code enforcement to be able to kind of strategize as to, well, how could things be phased? You know, is there an opportunity for some of these, for a plan to be put in place on the owner's part of how they intend to make improvements? And then there's a huge communications piece for code enforcement as well, in terms of making sure that as the Main Street program, that you're able, through the connections you've made by putting together a good inventory, that you're able to let folks know that inspections are coming, or that there's a new regulation that'll be rolling out. Being able to give advance notice to your business and property owners about what to expect and how to respond and what the options are for becoming compliant can really make a big difference for everybody in terms of their comfort level with what's happening. And then with local ordinances, you have a lot of opportunities to help address in a consistent, cohesive way how public space can be used for the private sector. So when we think about sidewalk dining, or parklets that have become so popular in the last several years. When you think about even displays for a business, being able to have merchandise displayed on the sidewalk. Usually there is some sort of local city ordinance managing that. If there isn't, there probably should be, because when you have an ordinance in place to manage something like sidewalk dining, then it's consistent and everyone knows what the rules are and how to be able to do that, as opposed to I'm not sure why they have tables in front of, their cafe. That they probably got that because they know the mayor, or, because they're friends with the Main Street manager. When that's, typically not the case. You have a strategy in place for how to do it. It's also useful to address it from an ordinance perspective, so that when you have folks that are not doing it well, when we've got sidewalk merchandise sales that are 24/7 and it's used mattresses and a tacky, ugly mess, how do we address that? If we had a sidewalk display ordinance in place that said it's only during, business operating hours and had rules associated with it, then we would have an enforcement mechanism and could be consistent. So lots of places for regulations to be useful and helpful to the private sector. Ultimately, they are then getting to have more space to operate their restaurant, or more space to display their merchandise, et cetera. And we also have a big opportunity through EV when we're looking at policy related to farmers markets or food trucks or pop-up markets, providing that temporary initial space that helps somebody try out an entrepreneurial idea, perhaps really be able to build a customer base that then allows them to be a strong enough candidate for a brick and mortar space. And so what are the rules locally when we're looking at how to do that in your community? How hard is it for me to find out how to do it? How difficult is it to navigate that system, if it even exists? And then what can we be doing through EV to make that more easy for the private sector? And a lot of that really just has to do with understanding from A to D, how do I get to the letter E to be able to move on to the next step. And that brings us to the toolkit and incentives and resources. And so if you have things that you're doing locally, either through your economic development partners, through your own program, through the city, to support, maybe you have grants or financial support in place, one of the questions would be, how do I, as a small business person, as an entrepreneur, how do I know about that? And so where is it? On a website somewhere? Is it in many different places on more than one website? But how do I get to the information that helps me be able to successfully open a business and helps me understand the steps that I have to take from I found a great place to I have a certificate of occupancy and I can actually open my doors. So encourage you to think about how you can develop a guide that puts in one place all these resources and supports, and also clarifies that process to help folks be successful. And then and another piece from that framework of an entrepreneurial ecosystem is the idea of the business cycle, and acknowledging that there's a place for startup work and sometimes we feel like we have a lot of focus on startups, but then we have growth. We have folks that are maturing. What about the folks that are ready to retire, or the folks that have had some sort of life change and have a successful business, but not one that they're going to be able to continue? And through our networking and support, and again, those inventories and keeping in touch with people, how are we able to intervene and move from a Facebook post that says we're closed as of Friday, to being able to facilitate folks having new investors and new opportunities to keep things going. So why do we do the shop local, shop small? Why do we have a focus on this economic vitality piece? It's absolutely because of the impact that local small businesses have on our communities. And when you think about 68 of every $100 being reinvested in your community as opposed to leaving the community, that's a really big impact that can have results in all sorts of things, from city services to libraries and parks and schools. So when we are looking at trying to increase that foot traffic downtown, trying to increase the spending and investment in our small businesses, storytelling is one of the ways that we can do that. When we are creating an emotional connection between our districts and the people that live in our community, the people who might be visiting our community, a connection with these individual business people as to who are they, and why do I want to be shopping with them and be a part of this local district. That emotional connection translates into more frequent visitation, more spending, and just more investment and more communication and promotion of your district, because you want to come to my town and meet business A, B, C, D, and be sure to have the pie and be sure to make a stop at the hardware store, etc. And it is, when we think about our shop small promotions and doing the American Express for Saturday, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, that's a tremendous resource with the national marketing capacity associated with it. But it's also a year-round opportunity to be promoting our local businesses and the impact that we have when we shop small. And so encourage you, if you haven't been to the website in a while, to go check it out and see what your community looks like on that shop small map for American Express. From technical resources, everything from small business development centers to your chamber, your ED programs, and your Main Street program yourself are all resources for entrepreneurs to help them be able to grow and expand and continue investing downtown. And definitely, let's remember that property owners are entrepreneurs too, and their business is the building and the investments that they make so that it can support business occupancy. Sometimes folks own their building and their business, but property owners are entrepreneurs too. So we've talked about some data throughout those pieces as we've talked about economic vitality, but now let's talk about data in terms of what are we collecting and what are we going to do with this information. So here's a little statistic for you from MIT. 80% of job growth in any community is by the businesses that are already there and not by the attraction efforts. And that's an example of a little factoid that you might want to promote, again, in terms of that. But why do we care about downtown? Well, we care about downtown because it has 58 businesses with 120 employees generating X amount of investment, looking at your property values on an annual basis. Those are a few reasons to be caring about downtown and thinking about why we want to invest downtown. So in Indiana, you guys are required to collect this list of information. And I understand you report that through the Maestro system. And as you are looking at this, so we start with the businesses in the business, we're looking at employment, capital improvement projects, private property investment, your volunteer hours, looking at events, you're holding events and how many folks are attending. all of these things are not being collected just to be submitted to the state and ultimately shared with us at the national level, where we can look at the impact that Main Streets are having across the state of Indiana and across the United States. But it's data that you can be using as you are advocating for your program, as you're writing grant applications to support special projects, as you're inviting partners to invest in your program. This data helps support all of those asks on your part, in addition to that it helps support a business person's investment. So if I'm thinking about buying that building and renovating it, all of this data helps me see that this is a growing district. This is a district that is investing in itself and in the future. And I want to be a part of that. And I want to join these other folks who are investing. Now, in addition to the information that you're currently required to collect and submit, these are some things that other programs collect, or just that you might want to think about. You probably already have this information, but are you telling folks about it? So when you think about how many people live downtown, how many apartments do you have, and how many, and an estimate of how many people live in the downtown. When you're thinking about your programming that you do, not just the big special events that you hold, but what about the networking coffee that you do quarterly, or the luncheon that you partner with the Chamber of Commerce to host, or the technical training programs that you're providing to support your businesses. All of those are things that you can definitely be counting and talking about as well, in terms of the number of participants you're having, the number of programs you're doing, and so on. When you think about the grants that either you are doing the grant writing, maybe your program is submitting those applications for particular projects, or maybe it's somebody at the city who is writing grants to support infrastructure investment. Maybe that's county investment if you happen to be a county seat, but those grant dollars all need to be counted and shared as well. And the Main Street program, even if you didn't directly write the grant for an infrastructure project for sidewalk improvements downtown, as an example, hopefully you were a part of that effort. Hopefully you provided a letter of support. Yeah, you had some advocacy, and ultimately the work that you're doing overall in the downtown ties to that work. And that grant was successful because of the work that your program's doing. So counting those overall grants that are supporting work downtown, as well as if you have funding and you're doing direct business or facade grant investment, want to be counting those as well. And then when we think about in-kind services, that's a direct impact on your budget. So if you have, if you have an accountant who's donating your annual bookkeeping services, or if you have a storefront office downtown and the window cleaner donates cleaning those windows throughout the year, whatever the in-kind services are, those should definitely be quantified and counted as well. In part, to make sure that there's an acknowledgement of that in terms of a future budget expense in case those services reduced or went away, but also to be able to show again that investment. When you're able to say that, 15 businesses donated, $30,000 through partnership, membership, or sponsorships, and 10 businesses donated $40,000 in services. Those are impactful numbers that help other businesses want to invest and help your funding partners that you're reaching out to, again, for grants or overall partnership, to see how they can be a part of the system. And then certainly all your communications and social media has data associated with it that you already have access to, and you can easily be sharing that in an annual report or including that in your information to the city, again, about the impact that you're having. So, but where not all the information is like Facebook and Instagram, where we can see that the followers have increased and what the engagement is at our fingertips. A lot of this information we have to get from somebody else. And so this is where I want to talk to you about building your partnerships to help you collect this information. Now, to some degree, there's a volume of this that you can secure from your planning department, whether that's the permitting, code enforcement. Sometimes that's all together and sometimes that's split up. So there's a volume of information that you can get through that. Your economic development partners can often help you with some of those broader numbers about investment and land sales or building sales that are happening. But a lot of what you need, you can get from property owners, business owners, realtors, contractors, and title insurance companies. So when you're dealing with a property owner who doesn't want to share this information with you, or concerned that it's gonna, any number of things, it'll raise my taxes. Certainly have lost track of the number of times I heard that over the years. So one thing is to remind folks that you aren't reporting this data in an individual manner. You're sharing it in an aggregate manner. You're saying over the last 4 months, this overall investment in private property was made, these overall building sales occurred, et cetera. So sometimes that helps them feel better. But if you are running into that they just don't want to share the information, realtors and contractor partners can be really effective at helping you estimate what that is. So on the realtor's part, they'll have access to information about what a building sale was, but both of those professionals are also great assets to help estimate what it would be. So that new canopy was approximately $10,000. That storefront facade renovation would have been $30,000 to $40,000. But they are definitely folks, because of their professional expertise, who can help you get to this information if you aren't able to secure it directly from the property owner. And when you're dealing with your business owners and trying to find out about, well, you did a new sign, so is there a permit at the city for signs that might tell you how much that was? Or is it that, again, in these regular contacts that you and your volunteers are having with business owners downtown, that you're able to circle around to them and say, hey, I noticed you got a new sign, and can you let us know how much that costs? We'd love to include that in our overall investment dollars in downtown. You can certainly estimate employment for your businesses in your downtown district. You're in them and aware of, is it owner occupied and there's just the one person? Do they have somebody who comes in on Saturdays and so there's a part-time person? But some of it is just pieces that you guys can put together, again, with your volunteer help through that Economic Vitality Committee to estimate things. When you're thinking about adding some testimonials, this kind of ties into that storytelling aspect that we talked about, where we're creating that emotional connection from businesses. Testimonials are a great way to capture information for folks about what they love about downtown, why they're here, what they love about this event they're attending with you, etc. And those little 2 or 3 sentence quotes can be really effective in how we share data. So let's think about this piece from the perspective of, again, this isn't about collecting information just to send it in on a state report. This is about information that you are already using, you have access to a lot of it, and it's useful to you in terms of your work throughout the year. And by the way, you send it into the state. So let's start with an example from Emporia, Kansas. So on the left, they took their annual report and captured it in this really kind of fun graphic that's very visual and really makes a lot of things be succinct that you can just captures your attention. This is something that they used as a one-pager to be able to pass out physically. Again, here we are visiting our businesses and property owners. Maybe we would mail it to property owners. We drop it off with businesses, leave it at the library and the rec center, extra copies for city council. All of a sudden you have a beautiful piece, and this was done with Canva, that captures a year's worth of work. And then also making sure that we are sharing this data on our website. And so if you've already got some reinvestment statistics on your website, gold stars for you. But I can tell you, as somebody who deals with hundreds of community websites in any given month practically, but certainly during the year, most people don't have reinvestment statistics on their website. Most communities are not telling that story to the folks who are somebody who's looking at investing, I'm looking at moving, I'm looking at, am I probably on your website at 9 o'clock at night? I probably am. Am I scrolling your Instagram, scrolling your Facebook? Absolutely. And so again, when we put the data together, it's our responsibility to also be sharing it in places where folks can find it so that they can easily use it in helping them with their own loan applications and their investment decisions. So this one happens to be, if you go check out the Emporia website, this is it's one of those trackers, and so it rolls, it's animated, etc. So you can be fancy, or you can just data there. You want to do things to make it accessible and to make sure that you are sharing it not just with your elected officials in terms of city support, county support, but that you're also sharing it with the general community. Hopefully you've got an email list going with local realtors and financial advisors and loan officers, and you're sharing this one pager with them too. So this example's from Metuchen, New Jersey. They did we flicker there for a second and we're all back?
I think we're back.
Or you can find them on Instagram and Facebook. But in this video, in addition to testimonials and lots of people involvement, it's a really fun, engaging video. They also threw in, and I used this screenshot from their Facebook page to kind of give you a little illustration. They threw in some of their reinvestment statistics. So, you know, this one's 50 plus storefront refreshes and signage from, again, from the data that they're tracking. Over 100 events, you know, held given period of time, etc. So the video is fantastic, but something like this example on the Facebook page, that's another great example of how you can share this reinvestment data. You could do that and be sharing that on your Instagram page, on your Facebook, and your other social media channels. And maybe you've got somebody local between school, you know, high school resources or local photographer, videographers who would help put together a video for your downtown. This one is from Independence, Kansas. And this is one to talk about return on investment. And we're going to take a few minutes to hear from Auburn Main Street just after I share some of this from Emporia. But this is one way to calculate the return on investment for the dollars from a particular funder. Now, in this case, Tabitha is looking at the dollars the city of Independence directly invests in the Independence Kansas program, which is a standalone nonprofit. And so she has gone in, and $30,000 is what the local city program invests. And she has done her math that it's getting them a return of $33.51 for their investment, every dollar they invest. And she's done that with this community impact at a glance piece. And this is all part of her annual report, which is on her website, where you are able to clearly see, we calculated the value of those volunteer hours. We looked at grants that we got, the public and private investment. Kansas has a really cool loan program that they do. But at any rate, all the things added together and divided, and you can come to a return on investment number. And you can think about what that calculation looks like for you in terms of what you would count. But it can be a really impactful way to reemphasize to your partners, whether it's the city or other funding partners, the ripple effect that their dollars are having in the work that's getting done. And she uses this in an annual presentation to City Council. I mentioned that it's on her website, and then she's able to do a print distribution for it. And then again, if you don't have a list yet of loan officers, financial advisors, realtors, and your economic development partners that you would be sending information to on like a monthly basis, I encourage you to put that together and start making sure that they're seeing your reinvestment statistics on a regular basis, because they're the ones, especially those loan officers, who are deciding whether or not to support financial investment from a lending capacity. So let's pop over to Auburn and hear about what they're doing with return on investment information.
Thank you, Amy. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. I just thank you for having me. I wanted to share with you today some of the ways that we use our ROI and our tools. And here in Indiana, many of us in the Main Street program are using Maestro to put the information in for the business investment, for what the city provides as far as investment. And it makes it a little easier to pull the ROA, but we don't have to calculate it. If you're putting the information in there, when you run your reports, it should provide you with a number for your ROI and track it for each quarter. And obviously the biggest impact is by year end, you're seeing the total investment throughout the year that you're able to use. But you can also, if there's a big quarter where you have big investment happening in your town, share that information, because this information goes out to not just our partners, our funders, the community, and it is used as an economic vitality and development tool. This information gets shared with our economic development county, because we have a county one here in our area that we want to share that information to. In addition, we want to share that with City Council and Board of Works and anybody else that has actually investing back into our program, so that we can show the impact on our downtown. They usually will get those kind of numbers as a county or as a whole town, but we're breaking down that investment and how it's happening and how it's impacting our downtown and why that's so important. So one of the things I wanted to say too is it is also helpful for additional public improvements. So when we go after grants, when we go after business recruitment and retention, just different things, we want to be able to tell that story of what's actually happening in our downtown. They can drive through and kind of see the businesses, but what's actually happening? What's happening with the facade program? How much is, what is that impact? In our community, we also have a TIF district that funds back into our downtown as well and supports some businesses and some of their investment that they're making. And those stories then can be combined to give that full picture of what's actually happening in our downtown through ROI data. And then you can break it down into bite-sized storytelling as well. So that's something I encourage. And I appreciate, Amy, that you mentioned putting it on your website. I fail at that. I do share it and I go to meetings and share it, but I probably should have it more posted or something that they could at least access easily on our website. So I think that would be really helpful for that storytelling. But it's really important. So that data that you're putting into Maestro and collecting, if you're doing that, if not, you should still collect that data. I use a form letter pretty much that goes out to the people I need to get that data back from. And it isn't easy. Not everybody wants to read or get that information back to you, but you have to do the best you can so that you can actually have good data that you're feeding back out to the public. So, like, for example, in our 2025, we were able to show we had such a good year with investment in our downtown. We had 5,237,44, 10 buildings were rehabbed. And that investment that the city put in was about 1,175,000, a little over that. So our ROI for every dollar our city put into investment, we got over, it was 4.41 in return in 2025. That's outstanding. Now, that's not going to happen every year. We have some big projects still going on, but that data is really showing momentum that's happening in our downtown, the investment, the interest, and it also is a real attractor to those who want to come to our community, who may want to start a business in our community. It lets them know that investment is happening and that it matters. So that's something I wanted to share. In addition, I think that other ways you can use your ROI is like business recruitment packages, and work with your economic development team, either if it's with your city or if there is a separate or county, just so that they have that information for the downtown as well. Development outreach. Also for city planning and budget, like when you share this data, it's impactful for them to want to give to your organization or support your organization financially. Outside of that, I think grant applications and being able to show some of the impact that maybe the investment, when they talk about how supported you are, if it feeds into it well, to be able to share the story about what's happening, how much investment's happening, and why it's important to maybe do an art activation, because here's the reason we have all this investment happening in our downtown. In addition, I think finally is that storytelling piece of what is happening in our downtown that makes that difference. So I hope that was helpful. I don't know if there's any other questions or if you wanted me to go into it any greater, but just trying to really just bring it home, get the data. You're going to have to reach out to those partners for that information, because there's some that don't want to give it. And I've had to actually look to see if they filed for their permitting, and use the data off of their permitting, because that is one way you can get that information because it's public. And but I do get that some people are very private about the amount they spend on their buildings, and don't necessarily want us to have that information. Specifically,
Yeah.
it was a foundation that was doing that. But there are some other ways you can go about getting that data, kind of a workaround, and hopefully
Yeah.
you don't have to
And
guess too much.
sometimes we do need workarounds that come in a lot of different forms. So thank you so much. It was great. I really appreciate you sharing what you guys are doing and how you're making it work and how it's benefiting you. When we think about that folks don't necessarily want to tell us, that's again another reason why we need to be using our partners. So on your part, that property owner may not be comfortable speaking with you and sharing that information directly, but maybe they're more comfortable with somebody from your economic vitality committee that they know through the Rotary Club, or that they know because of other financial, dealings that they're doing. And it's okay if you get it from, a third party or a second cousin, and again, emphasizing that you are and reporting all of this in aggregate, and that it is not something that is being, building X exactly this much money and building Y exactly this much money. And it also, I love your form letter that you're using as a reminder that the first couple times that we're coming at it, we're building that relationship in the permitting department, or, with these entities. But then as they get more familiar and they're like, oh yeah, it's, it's Jill, and it's that time of the year when she
Yeah.
needs that data from us. And so, here we go. It wasn't that hard, to help her out the last time. And we kind of get familiar with what we're doing. So
You're right. It's easier for them to track it if they know that we're going to be asking for it. So the first time you might send that out and you might not hear anything. And you can always put in your letter too that if they missed anything from the last ask, that they thought of after the fact, please
Mhm.
include it because that way we can update our information for year-end data. So
Yeah.
we have to be a little give and take. But yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Definitely. So another idea for how we're sharing this information and what can we do with it is here in Centerville, Iowa. And so part of this is that when I visited them last year, I just loved how they were showcasing property in the windows so that when I arrived at like 6 o'clock in the evening and was walking around the district, I was surrounded by information about what was happening in the buildings, how I could potentially invest, et cetera. I would advocate that whether or not you do something this detailed, these are actual floor plans, et cetera. At the very least, if you have information that you post in those available windows, either in partnership with the realtors who are representing them for sale or for lease, or acknowledging that sometimes property owners don't want to use realtors and that you are merely providing contact information and not acting as a realtor, but getting that information up and making sure that it includes your reinvestment statistics and your contact information is another great way to be doing exactly what we tell our business people to do. Make a great storefront window because you're advertising your business 24/7. And so, how can we put more information out there about what's available and what's happening and tie it to our program because we're a resource for helping you navigate your next steps in investing in the downtown. And another one that I wanted to mention is doing property tours. So again, when we're sharing the data, certainly, sometimes it's print, it's written, it's, put it out in our newsletters, et cetera. But when we do things like property tours, where we're either showcasing property that's available, property that's in the midst of renovation, or property that's recently finished, and look, this is what these new loft apartments look like, or this is what that first floor renovation has converted to. That we're also sharing this detailed data about the district. And so all of your reinvestment statistics would go with a demographics package that you're either putting together with an economic development partner or on your own, so that you're sharing overall market information as well as your detailed district information. But this is an example from Paris, Texas. This program is managed through the Texas Historic Commission Main Street program. In terms of a statewide, they emphasize doing these property tours in May as part of Preservation Month. But any community could do this, with or without that overall statewide piece. And then in addition to showcasing the properties on their part, it also gives their realtor contacts an opportunity to promote. So in this instance, they were featuring the American Legion Post, and they had they got a great little video that the realtor shared about how pre-promotion of it and then how much fun they had sharing the property. So property tours, and again, targeting different audiences too. So maybe you do them over with like a lunch or a happy hour, and you're targeting, again, those realtors, bankers, investors, but then to do one on a Saturday morning or in the early evening, tied in with an event that's geared towards your residents, your local people, because you want them to be excited about what's happening, to understand, why does it take so long? Well, if you saw it in the beginning, you might be more sympathetic to why it took a year or 2 years or longer. So we have lots of resources available to you. In particular, wanted to call out the SBDC Indiana Business Development Trainings and a link for that. And then, of course, your great resources through Indiana Main Street, and let them know if you're not sure whether or not they can help with a struggle that you're having. Just reach out and ask them, because I guarantee you they will help, or they will find you support to help you navigate challenges. These are some highlighted resources you'll be able to click through in the slides with related to annual reports, and some classes that we've offered. Again, those resources related to BOOMS if you need that. And in terms of small business surveys, we conduct really robust small business surveys, and that data is available on our website. And those can be helpful to you guys for, again, those overall data packages about what's happening. And of course, we have lots of self-guided tools. So my last piece is to encourage you to utilize our Small Business Hub. This is something new that we launched recently, and it provides an absolutely free resource for national networking and technical training for small businesses that doesn't require a membership in Main Street America, isn't tied to your membership in Main Street America. It's just a free resource that's available to your businesses. And so encourage you to share this with them as a piece that they can easily tap into. And with that, I would love to, we can take questions real quick. And if you have a moment to use the QR code and share a little feedback in our feedback survey, that would be awesome. But yeah, do we have questions? Glenn and Teresa.
Nothing has been put in the chat so far, but I
Okay.
do want to make sure everybody knows that, as you mentioned in the webinar, that entrepreneurial ecosystem, Joy and Maggie from Main Street America will be coming out and hosting their entrepreneurial ecosystem workshop at the PHP conference this fall. And sign up is out there for the PHP conference and that entrepreneurship ecosystem. So
Excellent.
I hope you sign up for that as you guys been going through this webinar here.
Definitely. Guys, I hope you can take advantage of that. It'd be great.
And if anybody doesn't want to type out questions in the chat, you can come off mute and ask questions too that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and end today. We do have the slides, so we will get this sent out to anybody who is registered today and was here today. So we'll get those sent out, but also we will get this webinar. Give us a little bit, because as technology changes on us, it sometimes likes to be fun with us to get it uploaded onto YouTube, but we will get this done here hopefully by the end of next week, and you can view it again. But also, please feel free to share it with your Economic Vitality Committee. This is a great webinar for them. So, but yes, as Amy said, we are here to help you guys. So reach out to Glenn and I. We love to chat and talk to you guys and help you guys in your journey. So thank you, Amy. We appreciate all of your knowledge and all of your help and everything. So thank you so much. But
great to be with you guys today.
Yes. So everybody have a wonderful day. And if I don't talk to you before the weekend, have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.